So it's time to turn to the reason why we're all here today, the BBC Music Magazine Awards themselves. So first we come to the Choral Award.
And to present it, please welcome to the stage one of our most distinguished violinists, former leader of the English Chamber Orchestra, former artistic director of the Academy of St Martin in the Fields, Kenneth Sillito.
I suppose when you get old enough, these are the sort of events you can come to. It's lovely to be here and see some of the faces behind the sounds we hear from our CDs. And I'd like to start with the nominations for the Choral Award. And you must excuse my terrible efforts at pronunciation. Ivor Pert's Adam's Lament and other choral works sung by the Latvian Radio Choir, Sinfonietta Riga, Vox Clementis and the Estonian Philharmonic Chamber Choir with the Tallinn Chamber Orchestra under Tonu Kaljuste, and that's on the ECM label. On the Winged Lion label, Britain's War Requiem with soloists Susan Gritton, John Mark Ainsley and Christopher Maltman with the Wroclaw Philharmonic Choir, the Trebles of New College Choir and the Gabrieli Consort and players under Paul McCreesh. And on the Chandos label, a recording of settings of the Magnificat and the Ninth Psalm by Petrassi, performed by soloist Sabina Svilak with the choir and orchestra of Turin's Teatro Regio under Gianandrea Noseda. Just looking at the second nomination, the War Requiem, makes me remember that I actually took part in the premiere in Coventry Cathedral in 1962. I was quite a young lad in those days, and it was a rather fraught occasion because in some ways the cathedral wasn't actually finished and lots of workmen were still sort of wandering about the place and annoying Ben Britten intensely with noise and chattering. And as you might imagine, for Britain, it was a really tremendous occasion. Not only did he write this wonderful piece, but he was intending to conduct the whole thing, which eventually he gave over to Meredith Davis to look after the main orchestra. Meredith Davis had been training the choirs, and Ben looked after the chamber orchestra. And I'd forgotten until I sort of thought about it again recently, that the live broadcast was actually delayed by quite a number of minutes because Ben, having been given the signal to start, realized that the audience was still trooping in, and apparently there was a huge gap, silence on the radio, perhaps a few veiled footsteps. And apparently the BBC had a very appreciative letter from a lady saying, what a wonderful idea to prepare us for this performance with this silence. And of course, at the end of the performance, there was silence. I think it had been requested, but I don't think anybody would have dared to applaud. And there was, in a way, a stunned silence. Nobody knew quite what to do. I think Ben, performers are used to applause. They bow and they acknowledge the applause and go off and come back again. But we just very quietly got up and went off. And I heard later that Fischer Dieskau had sat himself down in the stalls, choir stalls of the cathedral, in such an emotional state he could barely move. And the other aspect of it was that we had no idea of all this, but the political machinations were going behind the scenes, with Vishnevskaya being refused permission and all this sort of political infighting. At the height of what was then the the Cold War, of course. And I remember Heather Harper, 10 days' notice, coming in and singing the soprano part magnificently. So, having said all that, you might have gathered that the winner is Paul McCreesh and his musicians. For their recording of Britain's War Requiem on the Winged Lion label.
Well done. Kenneth, thank you very much indeed. Heather Harper once told me the most terrifying thing of singing in that premiere of the War Requiem was not actually the music itself, but the panic of people actually coming in, crushing into the cathedral, thought he was going to be squashed. Before we asked Paul McCreesh to come to the platform, and tenor John Mark Ainsley, superb example of tenordom. John Mark and Jonathan Papp are going to perform for us on something maybe not too far away in these commemorations of World War I, a setting of Yates by Ivor Gurney, The Clots of Heaven. Please welcome them.
Served in the trenches of World War I, was gassed twice, suffered enormous psychological trauma due to it, and apart from being remembered as one of our most lyrical English song composers, is also commemorated in Westminster Abbey as one of the great 60-war poets. I'll just leave you with that.
John Mark, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. We better give them an award, I think. So please, could Mr. Paul McCreesh join on the platform? Hurrah! Hurrah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this great honour. Particularly sweet, of course, because it's not just the recommendation of a handful of critics, but also voted by members of the music-loving public, which makes it particularly sweet for us. It was nearly, let's be honest, about 30 years ago when I remember my first recording, which is still available on Amazon, I'm told, of Carissimi Yates, and there was a fantastic young tenor who was probably still at New College at the time, singing the best high alto tenor singing I've ever seen, and or ever heard, I should have said. So it's a great joy that life takes us all in different paths. John Mark, of course, didn't stay very long as a high tenor in the Gabriele Consort and has had a fantastic international career. But it's been great to get to know each other a little bit better in later life. And his singing on this particular recording, we have three wonderful soloists, but it touches me so deeply, as you've just heard in his beautiful Gurney singing. So thank you, John Mark. A very quick thank you, as always, to Nick Parker, Neil Hutchison, my fantastic recording team, who are so much part of the creative process. Huge thanks, most of all, to my Polish colleagues, who are the main supporters of this series of large-scale oratorio recordings we make with the Wrocław Philharmonic Choir, which is absolutely my favourite choir for large-scale repertoire, perhaps even more than my other favourite choir, my own Gabriele's. Thank you to them. Thank you to Agnieszka Franko-Żelazny, the fantastic choir mistress of that choir and of the choirs on this, and to Andrzej Kosendiak, my friend, fellow conductor in Wrocław, the director of the National Music Forum, who enables me to make these records, and thank you for your great vote of confidence, Andre, in our artistic ability to allow us to make these pieces. And finally, my biggest joy is actually to accept this award on behalf of our Young Singers scheme. We had 100 singers from the age of about 16 to 2021. Quite touching to think that these young singers were singing Britain's great pacifist piece in the same age as Wilfred Owen when he wrote those searing poems that are set so beautifully by Benjamin Britten. Wonderful to hear, Kenneth, your reminiscences of the premiere. I hope that Benjamin Britten would be proud that we're continuing to engage young people with this tremendous, wonderful statement. And for me, it's a piece that always moves me deeply, and I just needed to record this piece. There's no other reason. But thank you all very much indeed.